Hey everyone, Ridden here, and thank you for coming. And tonight, we're going to be taking a deeper look at episode 6 of season 1 of Marvel Studios' WandaVision. Welcome back everyone, and after last week, I can only assume you woke up this morning just as excited as I was to jump into the latest episode of WandaVision. So let's get to it.
Previously on WandaVision.
After last week's shocking return of Pietro, I can honestly say I was floored. And even more jarring than her brother returning from the dead was the fact that seemingly
She recast Pietro?
last week's episode 5 was already full to the brim with cool Easter eggs and callbacks, such as Vision dropping the Charles Darwin Descent of Man line, which was a pretty cool nod to Paul Bettany playing Darwin himself back in 2009's film Creation, or Evan Peters' Quicksilver asking Wanda who's the popsicle when he first sees Vision, possibly referring back to the introductory scene of the character in X-Men Days of Future Past. But nothing could top the global reaction to Pietro Maximoff's return, not looking like Aaron Taylor Johnson, but instead Evan Peters.
You didn't see that coming.
This week's episode 6 begins with our new intro, which was in the vein of some 90s/early 2000s sitcom shows, really giving us a lot of Malcolm in the Middle vibes, all the way from the cinematography to the actual way the show itself was presented, with Tommy manning the hand cam that he traverses through the house and all of the character callouts with. All of the fourth wall breaking is either Billy or Tommy narrating to us what is going on, much like Malcolm did way back when. Did anybody peep the front of Vision's Westview newspaper? This was very cool to me, as we get to continue to see the character development of everyone before the show even starts. I wasn't expecting to see Agnes in the house rummaging through the fridge as obviously the neighbor that makes themselves at home far too often, to the point where they're considered part of the family. And as if the writers want to be sure you don't forget her possible role in all of this, we get an awesome shot of, and in addition, I can't say I was expecting, but probably should have been, even Pietro shows up here at the end, knuckling Tommy in the head as obviously the brooding, immature uncle character. And I don't believe him grabbing Tommy here is just coincidental. As I stated before in the comics, Tommy does eventually gain powers of super speed similar to his uncle Pietro. So it's a good assumption that they will have a closer, deeper relationship if the show takes that route. As reasonably, Billy would have the same relationship with his mother, whom his powers resemble. This week's episode is the Halloween special, which is typically what we get from all of our favorite shows around October of every year. And as has been the trend, the theme song itself continued to be very revealing and descriptive this week, referencing things like don't try to fight the chaos, don't question what you've done, if it's all illusion, sit back and enjoy the show, let's keep it going through each distorted day, and even dropping the subtle hint that we never know who's coming by the plate when Pietro appears on screen. Does this mean we're going to be getting even more surprise visits? Billy opens things up for us, wearing a costume very similar to that of his comic origins. And when he asks Tommy where his is, he says he's the cool twin, further linking him closer to his uncle Pietro, who the twins then see sleeping on the sofa, and Tommy acknowledges he even snores cool. So we're already starting to see the building blocks of that relationship. We also get Wanda in her costume as well, rocking her vintage Scarlet Witch outfit straight from the retro comics, which she says is the attire of a Sokovian fortune teller. And when Pietro says it's even worse than the costumes their mom made them when they were younger and got typhus, we see Wanda struggle a bit, stating that that's not how she remembers it, to which Pietro responds, you probably suppressed a lot of the trauma. I must admit that, being unsure yet of what role he will play or who he will be ultimately, watching this episode through the first time gave me all kinds of red flags about him, as if he's only there to antagonize Wanda. It seemed as if Wanda herself knows something is up, because she even says to Vision a bit later on that Pietro is full of surprises. During one of Billy's fourth wall breaking moments where he's addressing the audience talking about his parents arguing, we see Pietro look over at him, as if he's wondering what's going on, or possibly even eavesdropping, which didn't happen in Malcolm in the Middle with other characters when Malcolm would be narrating to the audience, indicating to me that Pietro here may have more cognizance than any other citizens in the town, and maybe possibly even Vision. So early on we learned that this version of Pietro is viewed as sort of a man-child, and that Wanda has been weird to him ever since he arrived. and that even the kids have noticed. Before we're allowed to dive too deep into that, Vision appears in his retro comics attire that leads Pietro to asking him if he's a traffic light, half-shucked corn, or even a booger. Wanda and Vision seem to be okay at this point, which to me was shocking, considering where we left off last week with them up in arms. I think that somewhere in the time between episodes, Vision decided to play along as he doesn't know what's going on really, and probably realized that Wanda seems to be in complete control, as he seems to shock her when he says he's going out for neighborhood watch instead of going with the family to trick or treat. We see Wanda here almost slip up and say something along the lines of that's not what he's supposed to do, as she would know since everything is happening of her volition, right? To me, this screamed of Vision just wanting to get away to go further poke and prod at the reality, as I'm sure Wanda also sensed. The best part about the opening to me was Pietro and Tommy flashing away to return in comic accurate costumes when Wanda asked what are they gonna wear out. Pietro's hair here, as well as the lightning across his chest, are straight off the panels of the pages that created him. I'm still not sure as to yet what his final identity may be, but as the family is walking down the street packed with everyone dressed up for the occasion, the kids run off and Pietro refers to them as demon spawn, a line that to me seemed out of place and even seemed to further Wanda's suspicion about him. Later, he even refers to the town as cozy as hell. Mephisto much? They then engage in a dialogue where Wanda asks him questions about their past, to which he responds, accusing her of testing him. Pietro acknowledges that he looks different and Wanda asks why he does. He says, "You tell me," and then compares Westview to Shangri-La, a fictional magical oasis first described by James Hilton in his 1933 novel Lost Horizon, which in pop culture has come to mean a remote, beautiful, imaginary place where life approaches perfection. So essentially, a utopia, which is what the creation of Westview is for Wanda. At this point, I believe we have to begin to ask the question of why does Pietro seem to be completely aware of what is going on, unlike other people in Westview. Vision had to gain his awareness, and the children, being of Wanda and Vision's creation, also fall in the realm of sense making when addressing why they too seem to know the truth of it all. But ever since his arrival, even him so much as referring to Vision as a popsicle, which was either a reference to this or Vision himself being cold and dead, Pietro has exhibited complete cognizance, something that to me further indicates he might not be all that he seems. Is this Mephisto or Nightmare now entering the reality to influence events? Taking it a step further, I've even seen some fan theories over the past week saying that maybe Pietro could be Loki or Doctor Strange, taking the form of Wanda's brother in an attempt to get closer to her to figure out what is going on. While Pietro and the kids are creating complete chaos, Wanda bumps into Herb on watch duty, whom she then watches describe the craziness that Pietro and the kids are behind, as we're then shown on screen behind him. As we all probably assumed she would do, she then digs to see if Vision is on duty, ultimately finding out he's not, confirming our earlier suspicions about what his true motive may have been for breaking away from the family. Herb then asks Wanda if there's something he can do, or if there's something she wants changed. This to me was interesting, as we're all still in the midst of wondering just how aware all of the neighbors and other Westview citizens are of the situation they're in. Do they all know Wanda is in control, as some of them keep alluding to? Back at the response base, Monica, Wu, and Darcy confront Hayward in a scene that ends seeing them being tossed out for their thoughts. At this point, it seems the trio is well aware that Hayward is up to something and that they're beginning to suspect him of having ulterior motives, so they resist. Here, I can honestly say I wasn't expecting the ferocity with which Hayward defended himself, barbing Monica pretty rough, saying that it's a good thing she wasn't around when her mom died because she clearly doesn't have what it takes to lead.
Damn!
There was a lot of loaded dialogue in this conversation, even to the point of Hayward saying if we take out Wanda, we put an end to this nightmare, which could be seen as a call out, as many fan theories believe that instead of Mephisto, Nightmare himself could be behind all of this, as with his standing in the comics, he would be the next most likely to be involved. And having been already rumored to be the next villain for Doctor Strange to combat in the MCU, and Doctor Strange already confirmed to be showing up in Spider-Man, and Wanda confirmed to co-star in Doctor Strange The Multiverse of Madness, it all makes sense contextually. Out on his own volition, we see Vision beginning to encounter glitches in our matrix here, as he sees a husband and wife repeating the same actions over and over again, as if they're stuck in a loop. We've seen this scene several times over the past few months, as it's been a staple of all of the trailers. Getting just a bit darker, our commercial break this week threw me for a loop, the premise of which was a starving kid on an island from the outset. Then the shark appears, acknowledging the kid's hunger and saying he too used to be the same way, and then he found Joe Magic, a yogurt he then pulls out and gives to the kid, who dies and becomes a skeleton right before our eyes as he struggles to open it. This all but confirmed the theory I've had that whatever is going on and whoever is doing it is trying maybe to take advantage of and steal Wanda's power or magic. Before the shark appears, the kid is saying how hungry he is, all while there's a crab right behind him. If he's so hungry that he would eat anything, why hadn't he eaten that? I believe the kid could be representative of Wanda maybe, grief-stricken over her losses after Endgame of her brother, Vision, and Black Widow, looking for any kind of way out but avoiding the obvious but difficult path of moving on and dealing with her emotions the right way, and that the shark could be representative of whomever has come to take advantage of her. Whether it be Mephisto or Nightmare or Agnes, providing her with a faux reality for the time being with the end goal of feeding on her powers, hence the name of the yogurt, Yo Magic. Because while Wanda may be happy existing in this reality that's been created, there is no way it can last, and the end result could possibly be just as fatal as what we see happen to the kid, ultimately dying alone. And while we don't know if there's someone else behind all of this, and if there is, what their motive could be, we can only assume it's not good. Sharks aren't exactly known to be the most embracing animals, and when they smell blood in the water, we know what normally happens next. So what exactly are we being told here? Who's the survivor trying to steal Wanda's magic? Shortly after, we get a bit more context to this commercial during a candid conversation between Wanda and Pietro in Town Square that we'll discuss a bit later, when she is telling him how all of this came about, admitting to him that she doesn't know how she did it at all, just that she felt completely alone and empty in the midst of endless nothingness. In the scene preceding this, we return to the streets of Westview, down near the Town Square scare, I'm assuming, where we see Wanda, Pietro, and the kids, with Pietro accosting Wanda for making the kids return all of the candy they earlier stole. In the background, we get some really cool Easter eggs in the form of the movies currently playing at the local theater, those being The Incredibles and Parent Trap. Now, considering we're dealing with a family of superpowered individuals with a set of twins, this was a pretty cool eye-winking capture to the fans. At this moment, I couldn't get over how cool it was to see both Wanda and Pietro side by side in full body shots in their retro comic accurate outfits. Pietro again begins to pull the wool back on the pretty exterior cover of Westview, acknowledging his awareness and knowledge of the overall situation, saying that he's only there to do his part, that being coming to town unexpectedly, creating tension with the brother-in-law, that being Vision, and stirring up trouble with the kids, ultimately giving Wanda grief. In this moment, I was a bit taken aback, as it seemed Pietro was insinuating outright that it was in fact Wanda willing him to be there to play a specific role. The two continued to engage in a rather revealing dialogue, finally giving us, the audience, some inkling as to which Quicksilver it is that we have been introduced to. Pietro tells Wanda that out of all the details he has, they're all fuzzy, and that he remembers only being shot down in the street like a chump for no reason at all, and that he just heard her calling his name, so he knew that she needed him, confirming that while he doesn't look like him, he is in fact the Aaron Taylor Johnson version of Quicksilver we saw die at the end of Avengers Age of Ultron. This again sent me in a bit of a spiral, as the personalities between the two Quicksilvers we've seen in the MCU, the one from Age of Ultron and the one in this episode and the last, are vastly different, the latter being a lot less mature, as well as not really seeming to care for Wanda as much. And then we got the first big aha moment of the episode, finally seeing one of the twins develop their ability. Tommy speeds away to grab candy for he and Billy and returns instantly. A very cool moment, as he too is decked out in a similar outfit to his Uncle Quicksilver's. Wanda chooses to let the twins go off and fully stretch out Tommy's newfound power, as long as they don't venture out past Ellis Street, a feat that unfortunately we'll later see their father will not heed. Returning back to the response base briefly, we then see Monica Wu and Darcy still lurking around trying to get a better handle on things after being dismissed and tossed out by Hayward. And after getting tied back into the system on the back of Darcy's OP hacking skills, they find out that Hayward has figured out a way to look through the boundary, something he hadn't shared with the group, and that people within the anomaly on the outskirts seem to be inert in some way. Luckily for us, we don't have to ponder too much on this, as we then get to see Vision is being tracked by Hayward by means of tracking the decay signature of vibranium. And as we're shepherded back into the anomaly, Vision begins to cross paths with the people of Westview, who it would seem reality have forgotten, as they are somehow frozen in place and not functioning. The scene following this discovery is also one we've seen in many of the trailers, as, having seen enough weirdness on the ground, Vision takes to the skies, resuming his form from the Avengers movies we've grown familiar with, to get a better handle on things from above. He then spots Agnes' stopped car and takes off to figure out what is going on. It would seem that Agnes also ventured out toward Ellis Street and was also stalled out as a result, begging the question, was she also trying to escape? If Agnes is in fact the MCU's take on Agatha Harkness, the powerful witch from the comics, seeing her here dressed as such is another small Easter egg to take notice of. The interaction that follows is one that was heavily edited out and piecemeal back together in the trailers we've seen recently, as Vision uncovers Agnes' subdued mind and probes her for information. Once she comes to, she acknowledges Vision for who he is and asks if he's there to help, saying that he's one of the Avengers, to which Vision responds yes, he does want to help, but what is an Avenger? Signaling to us, the audience, that while Vision may know well of his existence and his capabilities, he really doesn't remember anything past the beginnings of Westview about himself. A statement he made to Wanda last week in their heated argument. Agnes also tells Vision that he's dead, something that, to my surprise, didn't seem to shake him up so much. So maybe Vision himself also senses something sinister may have preceded the reality he's now in. She also tells Vision that Wanda won't allow anyone to leave, not even allowing them to think about it. I have a hunch that we may later learn that Agnes is in fact a part of all of this, and that in this moment, she may be feigning ignorance and compliance to the will of Wanda just for Vision's sake. To what end, I am not sure yet, but I do believe that to be the case. This segment ends with Vision reinstating Agnes' Westview persona, sending her back on her way, and him then crossing Ellis Street and heading for the anomaly's perimeter. Returning to our trio, back on the base that they shouldn't be on, Monica gets final confirmation from her contact that what she needs to re-enter Westview is on the way. As Wu and Monica head for the door, Darcy reveals to Monica that she actually can't go back inside of Westview, as via Hayward's files she's now in, she's discovered that he had Monica's blood work, and that because Monica has been in and out of the boundary twice now, the energy inside of her has rewritten her cells on a molecular level twice, and that it's changing her. Monica disregards this all and says she's still going back in. Darcy then tells the others that she's staying, as she still has work to do on Hayward's last firewall, and parts ways with them as Wu and Monica leave to meet her contact on the other side of the ridge, a contact whom we now know to be male. Now, are we finally going to get Reed Richards and the Fantastic Four in the MCU? Now in the center of the town square scare event, it would seem, Wanda and Pietro finally sit down for the episode's long-awaited sibling heart-to-heart. Wanda and Pietro discuss how they believe their parents would really like it there in Westview, a line that stuck out immediately to me, as all of fandom knows that their father is Magneto, and as what occurred with Pietro, is this the line that will eventually lead to a cameo by Michael Fassbender, or maybe even Ian McKellen? Here we learn that Pietro is in fact cognizant of what Wanda has done here, asking her one of the many questions we've all been pondering, and one I'm sure Vision would love to finally get the answer to too. That being, where were all the kids of Westview up until now, as throughout the episode we have now been seeing children other than the twins roaming around the town. Pietro continues to elaborate on his thoughts on the matter as a whole, applauding Wanda for, given the situation and circumstances, how she has handled it all. From couples and families staying together to people even having better jobs. The conversation we discussed earlier shortly in relation to the Yo Magic commercial then begins, with Pietro asking Wanda how she pulled all of this off, to which she tells him she doesn't know and only knows the loneliness and grief she was experiencing. My main takeaway from this scene was again that whether this is actually Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver with a new face or someone more nefarious hiding underneath, the goal here was to get close to Wanda to find out how all of this has taken place. And in a scene very reminiscent to the dead Vision we got in an earlier episode, Wanda then looks back at Pietro to see a dead version of him with bullet wounds across his body, mirroring those he died from in Sokovia, saving Hawkeye and others. Closing out the episode, we finally see Vision attempting to escape the anomaly, and as he does so, he is pulled apart piece by piece. Once he does make it completely outside of the anomaly while still being pulled back to it by whatever force created and borders the perimeter, being looked upon by Hayward and his team on the outside as well as Darcy, he collapses, having deteriorated and died right in front of them. This occurrence seems to finally answer another of the fandom's lingering questions. And what would happen to Vision if he left Westview? Would he survive as he was reanimated inside and exist still as Monica's clothing did, or would he return to non-existence? Darcy, now handcuffed to a vehicle by one of Hayward's men, looks on helplessly. It is here we see Billy's powers back inside of the anomaly develop and come to the surface, as he hears his father's screams, feels his pains, and sees what he sees in his mind, stopping Tommy in his tracks with a hand immersed in what seems like blue energy. He then runs back to his mom, delivering the news that his dad is in trouble. In a complete heel-turn statement, Pietro then delivers to me a line that may give us a final determining indicator as to what his true intentions here in Westview may be, telling Wanda,
"Don't sweat it, sis. It's not like your dead husband could die twice."
Which then prompts her, to the twins' bewilderment and shock, to blasting him with a fistful of red energy, sending him through a prop gravestone and out of the rest of the episode. Wanda then instructs Billy to focus, guiding him to telling her Vision's location on the outside of the anomaly and that his dad may be dying. In the most absolute display of power we've seen thus far in this series, Wanda then powers up, seemingly halting everything around her and possibly even in Westview as a whole, beginning to expand the barrier of the anomaly, which we see starts to encroach upon the area where Hayward, Vision, Darcy, and the response base reside. Monica and Wu even notice in their vehicle's rear mirrors, although now a significant distance away and possibly out of reach of danger. Unfortunately, the response base and everything and everybody around it are not, and we see as the perimeter of the hex engulfs it all, turning everyone and everything circus themed, which is a really cool Easter egg for anyone who played the classic Marvel Ultimate Alliance game back in the day, as the circus big top level was one of the game's most memorable parts, let me tell you. We even see a helicopter turn into a hot air balloon. We also see Vision return to his fully formed self, still passed out but seemingly alive. But not Darcy, whose new form I'm assuming will be revealed to us in the next episode. Hayward, it seemed, managed to get away with his few remaining sword agents. Our episode ends here with a final shot of Wanda with the power now leveling down within her eyes now that the job is done. Every week this show continues to raise the bar, and coming into episode 6 from episode 5, I can't honestly say I didn't expect as much. The implant of Evan Peters now portrayed Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver to the show added an amazing amount of charm, and the addition of the twins was just the icing on top. I love the direction of all of the characters we've thus far been introduced to, both on the inside and outside with Sword. Agnes and Herb also continue to provide the audience with questions as to just how much they know and are capable of doing here in this space. Wanda, more times than I expected, also addressed the reality of it all more times this episode than any other we've seen, whether it be in her dialogue with Pietro or Herb, or just in her actions. And now that more people and places have been added to the anomaly, what does this mean? Where is Darcy? And to add to that even more, the more people that have now been added just continue to stack the list of the more people that will eventually have to leave, which could end up with them also having the same molecular occurrences as Monica. Is this how we will get mutants introduced in the MCU? I really can't wait to see what next week's episode 7 will bring. And I know you can't either. I will of course be continuing to cover the show here weekly on my channel. And if you feel so inclined, I would love to have you here back next week to continue to cover it with us. Again, guys, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and click that bell for notifications if you've enjoyed our content here tonight. Jump down in the comments and let me know your thoughts. And while you're at it, be sure to check out some of the other content here on the channel. All of the necessary links are listed here below for you to keep up with the coming content and shareables. Please be sure to follow me on all social media platforms, or just the one you use most frequently. We are slowly but surely building a community here, and I would personally love for you to be a part of that. And last but not least, we have a merch store. So whether you see something you like or just simply want to support the channel, head on over to our shop and grab something. Or grab everything. But again, thank you so much, guys and gals, for visiting here with us today. I really appreciate each and every viewing minute of your time you've given us. There's loads of content we'll be sending your way, so I'll be seeing you. But for now, be blessed. And it was written.